Good afternoon, everybody. This is Steve. I am the developer of Alliance of the Sacred Sons, and this is a new Let's Play of a sort. I'm actually going to be going over some of the new features in 7.4, which include the Intel system and the influence system, which is actually just as important, if not more so. I'll also be going over a brief overview of the game loop and kind of how to win and what's important. So, without further ado, I'll go ahead and get started. So, first thing is you'll notice these numbers here, and you'll notice that each number has a house symbol. So this is influence. So essentially influence is radiated from systems that you control as a house, whether you have colonies there, outposts, logistical stations, star bases. Every piece of infrastructure that you build increases your influence. So the owner of a particular system has an inherent level of influence, but they are not always the primary influence holder. For example, if you look at AotSS, you will see that the actual governor, the owner of the system, is House Warlock, but when you look, New Terra is considerably more powerful of a planet. We have a value of 165 versus a value of 128, plus of the infrastructure. So when you look at the overall influence, and given the fact that it's a civilization capital, which also counts the type of planet, Neosiris has the most influence. So this influence radiates outward. It kind of depends on how many systems. It doesn't go forever. It goes for roughly about 10,000 light years or so. So what that means in game terms is, in order to colonize or build outposts and systems, you must first claim them. Now, if there is no claim, for example, this system, let's look at Pyrrhus, there is no holding house, which means anyone can actually claim the system. I don't know why you'd want to. It's a bunch of barren rocks and some gas giants, but you could. And you would simply do that by going into political command mode and doing a claim system project. Now, if nobody claims the system, anybody can claim the system regardless of their influence. However, if you do not have the most influence in a system, the house that does have the most influence will be very upset, and they will actually send you a demand to stop the claim process, which you can then ignore or deny. But if you deny, then of course they will be upset, and you don't want every house pissed at you. So that in a nutshell is the influence system. So if you look over here, as we have fewer planets, now you'll see here for the majority of it, my house does have the most influence because I have the most planets. But here, if you look at prosperity, if you look at Aeonian, it's kind of hard to see, but you see the owners typically, but not always, have the most influence, depending on who's in the system. If we look at prosperity, there's actually 2 planets there that are being shared. But you see that Halcyon Musharraf, this planet actually has more people on it, 107 million versus 70 million. This is also a province capital versus the system capital. So this is actually going to get a little bit more weight, unless, of course, there are other systems around it. So, it's usually, but not always, the owner of that. So that's basically influence in a nutshell. All right, let's talk about Intel. So this is the new Intel view. Not a whole lot to see. This basically shows you the Intel progress of the system, which is 100. Most of your systems that are close are going to be at 100. That basically means you know everything about the system, you know what's contained within it, you know the types of planets, how many, etc. And you also see that there are 3 Inquisitor squads in this system. So if you zoom in, you'll see actually where they're at. And you see here we have all 3 Inquisitor squads here. Now, Inquisitors, let's take a closer look at an Inquisitor. So Inquisitors are actually squads. They're led by a specific Inquisitor. These are basically your shock troops / Marines / covert ops people. And they can do a lot of things. Right now, they can spy. They can gather intel. They can train. Eventually, they're going to be able to do special ops. Actually, probably in the next update or 2, you'll be able to use them for blackmail, for assassinations, for intimidation. So essentially, you are building up a way to get characters to do what you want. For this initial release of the Intel system, though, they basically spy and gather intel, which is still important because, as you'll see, information is important. So Every Inquisitor has a special ops rating, which determines how good they are at things like assassinations and blackmail and extortion, things like that. And then they have an espionage rating. And this is for their kind of general rating. This is how good they are at things like spying, staying undetected, completing missions successfully. They have a mission, how long they've been on a mission, mission progress, which shows you the percentage that they have. They actually have to prepare missions. That includes travel time, preparing their assets, getting their squad ready, and deploying across a planet or deploying to show a character. So you can change the scope when you're doing intel, and this is the most common use for an Inquisitor, is assigning them to passive or active intel. So this is not a very good Inquisitor. 1-1 is about the lowest you can get. So let's go ahead and assign them to active intel because they'll be a little bit better at it. So it's done basically just like an action. It does cost an AP. So we're going to confirm that action. They're always confirmed, so you never have to worry about Inquisitors not doing what you say. As long as you pay them, which we'll get to in a moment, they will always follow your orders 100%. All right, so they're setting to active intel, preparing that stance. So let's go ahead and well, let's do this. Let's look at our house situation. All right, so we've got kind of an interesting situation. It's actually better than it usually is. We have Milok, who is in a Cold War with us. We have Iloa, which is absolutely the most powerful house. They have 4 holdings. One of the big things about these recent updates is I have changed the balance. Houses now have a lot more holdings, so it's a lot more even. So instead of you having the lion's share of the holdings and everyone else just having like 1, you will have houses that can have 4 or 5, and those are the ones that you really need to watch. We are also in a Cold War. This is actually their house intel rating. It goes from 0 to 100. The higher it is, the more you know about them. As you can see, as I click on Iloa, I don't know anything about their strategy. I don't know anything about their resources. I don't really know anything about anything really other than their relationships, which actually I'm going to change that probably in a coming update. So I'm going to go ahead and assign an Inquisitor to Iloa. So we click on here, and we have a squad database selection. This, of course, shows you their stats, and this shows you the percentage that they are to their mission. You can always pull them from a mission. So here we've got, this person's very good at intel. They've got a 3. The highest you'll generally see at the beginning is a 4. So I'll go ahead and assign them to the target. So now, when you go back into it, you can see they've got the little death's head here. That shows you that they have an Inquisitor assigned, so that they'll begin intel. So now when I go to the intel nexus, you can see now their passive intel, the preparing mission for House Iloa. So there's 4 things you can do on the intel nexus screen. This shows you the budget. We haven't set the intel budget yet, but this is important. This shows you what your Inquisitors expect to cost for the upcoming year. If you don't set the budget to at least that amount, there is a chance that they will defect, and you'll see that in the budget screen. I'll show that to you shortly. This also shows you the amount you're spending for informers, which I'll get to in a minute, and then the amount for spec ops, which is not in this release, but will be in soon. Over here, you'll see important rumors or plots that you're aware of. Again, it's not in this release, but it's coming up very shortly. Plots essentially are actions that characters take to do something. Now, it's not as Machiavellian as always trying to kill somebody, or it's not always about assassinating the Emperor. Sometimes it's just about trying to get a new job. Sometimes it's about trying to move to another planet. Sometimes it's just about accumulating wealth, accumulating power, marrying somebody. And it's not always as exciting as all that. But these are the major rumors that actually would directly affect you. Things that typically affect your Celestial Council, or that affect you, or that affect high-ranking members of your house. So over here, this gives you, of course, the status of your Inquisitors. This shows you the experience points. So if they're on a mission, they gather XP. Generally, it's 1 to 3 XP per turn for both Spec Ops and Espionage. Or you can have them train. I'm actually going to go ahead and have Paulina train. Go ahead and start that process. So that basically expedites, since they're 1 and 1. Doesn't cost us any extra. You still pay for the squad, but it gives them something to do rather than just kind of stand around. So, and they can start doing that immediately. So we'll have them train. All right. So, and then over here we have this is the intel level. So if I zoom in here, it gives you a little bit more information. Intel progress is from 0 to 100, very similar to everything Intel based is 0 to 100. 0 meaning no intel, 100 meaning full intel. So you know everything about this planet. So which means in practical terms, you're able to see all the culture and demographic information. Especially you're able to see unrest factors. You're not able to see all that when you have less information about a planet. Active informers. So if basically people love you and they're generally loyal to you, they will agree to inform for you. And now you can put money towards this in your budget, which I'll show you in a moment. And then you can also set the, once you have a budget, you can actually set the level of informers, so you can actually set priorities. So this kind of works where if everybody's high priority, everybody gets the same. But if you have a pool of money, you can actually set priorities. And I'll show you that in a moment. So right now we have 2 Inquisitors on the planet. As you recall, we sent one off to Iloa to go spy on them. This is a general intel chance. This means that in any given turn right now we have a 12% chance of gaining an info on any one individual character on the planet. Special intel chance is 8% chance of gaining a specific intel. Specific intel is things like plots or rumors. Again, that's not in yet, but it will be in soon. EIC level, this is the Empire Intelligence Center. Think of it as kind of like the CIA building of Langley. The highest you can go is level 3. These allow you to build or train Inquisitor squads, and they serve as a very powerful intelligence nexus. But of course, the more you build, the higher your fear level potentially goes. And we'll get into that in a moment because that has also changed. So right now, I have the maximum Inquisitors supported. Basically, it's real simple. For each level of EIC, you can have 1 Inquisitor. So the total number of levels across all your empire is the total number of Inquisitors that you can support. So I don't have any other EICs built, so I can't build any other Inquisitors. So pretty simple. So anyway, so we back out. We go back to the system. So this shows, again, this is your informers, this is your EIC level, and this is your special intel. And these show the Inquisitors on the planet. From here, you can assign an Inquisitor to a planet if you want them to view, travel to that planet and do passive or active intel. So it's a pretty simple system right now. It's pretty easy. Now I can also assign to a character. So I can actually, let's go to the domestic prime here of Hawken. Let's say I want to go ahead and assign an Inquisitor. Now right now I have 1 AP. It costs 1 AP to do this. It will actually be blacked out if you can't do this. And you can see this has changed a little bit for those that have played. This shows the intel level. It's high, which means most everything has been discovered. And you also have very specific ratings on the various emotions and motives. And you can also see all their character traits. So I probably wouldn't want to assign to them. But here's one with low intel. This is the War Prime. Low intel, so as you can see, most of their character skills are unknown, and we don't even know, we don't even have a clue what their motives are. So let's go ahead and assign an Inquisitor to them. I'll go ahead and they're training, they're preparing, I guess I'll go ahead and I don't really need New Terra to be active, so I'll go ahead and assign to them. So now you can see they've been assigned, and then of course no APs remain. So that's kind of intel in a nutshell. Kind of show you a few other exciting things. The logistical networks, when we worked a little bit, there was an ongoing bug where it would kind of flicker and look weird. I finally have fixed that. Generally, houses will now build logistical networks as they try to expand. Of course, we still have our province hubs and system hubs. Trade has pretty much remained unchanged, so that has not changed a great deal. Over here, these are the different intel. Right now, we see that there's different intel levels. So we found 4 characters that we have found passive intel on. So basically what that does, it goes up a level, and then you can either, of course, click on and get to the character directly, or you can just right-click and take them off. So these are the filters. This is actually going to be a much more robust, because there's going to be a lot more alerts, especially with the rumor system. There's going to kind of be a lot changed with that. So let's kind of go. So this is your power. This is something that's really, really important to understand. So in fact, to the point where I'm probably going to change the center piece to make power the most important piece, kind of like where the AP is now. Here's the thing. As your power decreases, everything you do with a character, basically if you're giving them something, whereas if you're acquiescing to a demand, or if you're giving them something that they demand, or if you're giving, they challenge you in an action, and they don't do what they say they're going to do, that takes power away from you. And if you have too little power, say under 100, basically your assassination chance skyrockets. Oh, no, that's not right. I got to fix that. Generally, the higher your power, the lower your assassination chance. And as it drops, what that basically represents is that you're losing influence within your empire. And without influence, you really can't do anything. I mean, you're the emperor, and you have a certain amount. You can always do projects, but that doesn't mean you're always going to get support. The projects have actually been reworked significantly as far as how how ADA is generated. So I'll go to that. We'll go ahead and hit budget because that's what's due. Been a few changes to this as well. So we've got the planets. Now you can kind of see we have green and red. So basically, if they are a positive planet, meaning they have a positive GPP, then this is what's shown, and then this is the empire share, which on planets that you own directly is always 75%. And then right now the house holding tax for planets that you don't have, that are not holdings of yours, are 25%. So you see Herqua is owned by Halcyon Musharraf, and they are generating 108 billion credits in gross planetary product, but I'm only getting 27 of that right now. So when you add all that up, basically you take this empire share and you take the positive and you subtract the negative, and then and this is the financial prime, and this actually shows their ability to collect taxes. So right now this is a 73% efficiency. So she's going to collect 73% of all the positive empire share. Now obviously there's no negative. There was a bug where it would collect the negative as well, but you can't collect negative share. So it's just going to be 73% of all the positive empire share, and then you subtract the negative share, and that becomes the gross empire product. Now that becomes your budget for the upcoming year. Now this is new. This is add subsidy. Now it costs power. Again, a lot of things that you do cost power. That's really the big loop in the game. You're playing a 4X game, but at the end of the day, you can't give away everything to everybody. If you always say, yes, I'll do this for you, and yes, I'll give you money, and yes, I'll give you resources, whatever you want, you're going to basically find yourself powerless. And at that point, it's very hard to gain power. You basically have to get it through the military or through projects like colonizing and showing your people that you're willing to expand the empire. So right now, military actually has been increased. So now not only is it good for restoring order at the cost of fear, but it also increases power because you're doing it in a powerful way. So I'm going to go ahead just to kind of show, I'm going to put a fair amount. Go ahead and right click to lock it. Domestic basically does what it's always done. It increases your much less efficiently, but it decreases your unrest, but also increases happiness, and it doesn't give you any fear. It actually lowers fear. You're basically giving money to the planets and for benign purposes, investing in the economy, that sort of thing. Now here's Intel, what I was talking about. So you can see how the squad disbandment. So right now, I need at least 120, as you recall from the screen, I need at least 120 billion credits to pay my Inquisitors. If I have less than that, like right now I have 96, that means there's almost a 20% chance that each squad will be checked to see if they would disband. Because basically, you're not paying me enough. They're only loyal if you pay them, remember. And I don't have any money for informers. So if I go over my budget, so now my chance of squad, I've got enough to pay them, so they're not going to disband. And I have a surplus that can be used for my informer pool. So we'll kind of make that 26 billion, so it's not much. Reforms still don't have a use yet. That's coming soon. And then savings, anything I don't use, will go back into my house treasury. Now this house treasury is important because if I have a negative gross empire product at the end of the year and I cannot make up the difference for my house treasury, the empire collapses and I lose. So it's pretty important that I keep this up however I can. So I do have the option if I wanted to boost the budget. Either I get a good start. You always start out with 500. That's something that the empire is basically put in trust for the new emperor to use so that they have something for their first year, even if all your plans are in the negative, which I've kind of reworked the economy so that generally won't happen. You should be pretty close to zero, maybe a little bit under, but you won't be in an enormous hole and you won't have thousands and thousands of dollars to spend either. So I'm not going to go ahead and add a subsidy, but I just want to show you how that works. So we'll go ahead and review the budget. It's always passed. So you'll see that it's verified. So now I can move forward. This has been locked in, and we'll go ahead and close that. So we'll kind of look at that. So we'll go ahead and end the turn. And I've been able to get the turn. Now this is a fairly big, I went ahead and did a moderate size small quadrant, about 12,000 light years across. So I'm able to get the turn generation down to around 30 seconds or so. On very small, it's about 15. So that's kind of something I'm still working on. Keep in mind it is a turn-based game. There's a lot going on under the hood. So especially with the additions of Intel and with the house AI, which has been improved. And we'll kind of show you what that looks like here in a moment after the turn progresses. So we'll kind of get an idea of strategy. We haven't really talked about strategy I kind of wanted to lay out the major changes for those of you that have played, and then for those of you that have not, really there's some earlier videos that kind of go into more detail about exactly what everything does. This is more of a, okay, this is what's changed, and here's how it could affect your strategy. This is what, you know, the next 5 or 6 turns might look like when you're looking at kind of what to do. So we should be wrapping up shortly on the turn. I see we've got the trade has been set, so we should be getting, okay, there we go. Now, one thing about this update is that the houses are a lot more aggressive. I have given them basically more authority to do projects. Projects are pretty major, but one big thing is that there was kind of an earlier version of the game where you could basically keep doing projects and kind of block other houses from getting anything done by just keep using their ADM. And I've changed that to where they will always, if you don't have a good relationship with them, they won't allow you to use their ADM at all. And I'll show you that in a minute. But they will always reserve at least half their ADM for their own purposes, unless you're allies, in which case they'll still allow you to use their full ADM. But that ally, you have a full relationship. So here we've got 1 million citizens or more content, but here we've got 7 million citizens to heal. So you see my fear has gone up a little bit. The more I put into military, this is basically a show of force. So obviously people are going to be more nervous. Also, your Inquisitors, the more Inquisitor squads and more EICs you build, the higher your fear level is going to go. So fear is important because once it goes higher than your love, you basically become a despot. You rule by fear. A few things change. So riots become more frequent. Unrest becomes more frequent. Even though it costs less to maintain a despotic empire than it does a benign empire, which would be, you know, done primarily through improving planets, not having a large military presence, not having a large Inquisitor presence, or having them just surveil as opposed to active activities, etc. Okay, so let's do this. So one of the first things you want to do is kind of look around. So I have a 332 power. And that's pretty good. When it gets anything over 400 is really good. Anything under 200 is a big cause. And you'll see this, I've color-coded it, so it goes from blue to green to yellow to red. So as you kind of lose power. So we've gained intel on several people. This looks like some of our primes. Not terribly important at the moment. We built a factory. Another thing I've increased is I've increased the amount of build points and the amount of ADM. So it should be easier to do more projects. Now over here you see that we already have a house doing something. So this is House Hawken. Now we are allies. Even though I really don't have much intel, I know enough to know they're doing something on Pyrrhus. I don't know what, and this is where intel again comes in handy. I could put an Inquisitor on them to find out. In fact, I'm going to do that. I just want to see what my people are doing. So we're going to pull them off training. We're going to go ahead and assign them to the Inquisitor. So hopefully in a few turns I'll get more information about what they're doing. Now over here, this shows their strategy. So let's look at one. So Halcyon, I have full intel on. So their ultimate strategy is they want to increase their power. Now they haven't yet decided. There is a sort of a AI loop that goes through to determine what secondary strategies work best. And there's a bunch of them, and I keep adding more to them. But if they don't work, they're going to kind of cycle back through until they find something that works. So in this case, power basically means they're trying to improve this number here. And the house power includes their holdings, includes their characters, the power of their house leader, holdings, that sort of thing. So, and that's very important because it determines how likely they are, especially if you have a low power and they have a high power, makes it very unlikely that they will do what you ask them to do.